Welcome back, City Builders. Kodiak the Kodiak here, and today's Dev Insight is our final one in the journey. In today's video, they break down some new features with the photo and camera tool, and I help give you guys some good explanations on what each feature does. So if you were confused by Monday's video or today's, hopefully I'll be able to shed some insight. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and don't forget to turn on notifications because there's no scripted content releases for City Skylines II until the game launches on October 24th. So you might end up missing some of the information, so I highly encourage you to turn on that notification bell so you can keep up to date. Let's show off our cities like never before. And before we get started, I just want to remind you guys that this is the last Dev Diary, so I want to thank all of you for joining me on this journey. We have no idea what they plan to release in terms of content. We had that surprise Dev live stream, which I do plan on doing a video on, so make sure that you guys are subscribed and your notifications are turned on down below, so that way you can keep up to date on all the City Skylines 2 news. Because don't worry, I still plan on making videos in the coming months as we approach City Skylines 2's launch. I also plan on breaking down everything that they showed off in the developer community manager live stream that they did, I think yesterday or the day before, on my Twitch stream today after this video goes live. So it might be a couple hours after this video goes live, but I do plan on breaking it down today. So if you guys want to drop a follow on my Twitch, maybe go check it out. If you see this within the first, like, I don't know, 6 hours after this video's up, I might be live, I might be covering it, I might be live even after that. I might be playing some Starfield though, but that's a different story. And remember, if you haven't checked out my video covering the Dev Diary, you can look at that up in the annotations. Now, today's Dev Insight is also on the shiny new camera tools, if they have dubbed them on the screen right now. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Today, it's lights, camera, action time, because we're talking about cinematic camera. So say cheese.
Nice.
All the cinematic shots look so good.
The cinematic camera so awesome that it is. Well, we saw from the City Skylines 1 community that the players really wanted to take a lot of awesome pictures and videos from the cities. So
True.
We wanted to provide them the tools
for
that from the get-go. So they can just capture all of the most memorable moments in their cities from the launch of the game. With the photo mode, we want to enable the players the capability of taking the most perfect shot of their city if they really want to.
So if you guys don't recognize these pictures, quite a few of them, especially this one right here, and are from the actual written Dev Diaries. These were some of the thumbnail pictures that they used in the actual written portion of the diaries themselves.
The camera features many options. There are the camera
so
tab,
many options.
which features.
They still haven't explained what the this button is. I don't know if this is like an autofocus button. If somebody knows, or you guys think you might know what this is, please let me know down in the comments. I'm very curious to find out what this circle button is, as I keep hitting the YouTube buffer bar. But we went over almost all of the settings on Monday. So if you guys want to learn about how any of these settings work, make sure you check out that Dev Diary video that's up in the annotations, because it will kind of, let's just say the camera is a little complicated. It's definitely set up for more advanced and power users, or like people who like actually know how a camera works. I really hope they put a simple mode in here somehow, because there is just so much. There's so much to like dig into in the actual camera settings, and you'll see a bunch of them right now, and you'll probably be like, what the heck? So
The camera body, camera lens, and aperture shape options.
I don't even know what aperture shape does. I have a degree in video production. I don't know what aperture shape affects. So there's so many settings in here. So many settings. So these are the lens settings. So this is the camera settings. So these affect like actual camera settings, like the camera body, the image sensor, stuff like that. Over here is lens settings. So these will affect focus, motion blur, stuff like that.
Tab, which has the depth of field, motion blur, bloom, vignette, film grain, and panini.
Vignette, I think is, I actually know how it's pronounced. Some of my professors always used to pronounce it in college as vignette, is this setting right here in this tab that I'm slowly moving upwards and trying to get to. And now it's going to buffer. So that's when I'll actually put one on screen right now in post. So this is a vignette. So when you add, like, if you look at the edges of the screen now, you'll notice there's a little bit of a black on the edges. And then I'll turn it off when I snap. And that's what a vignette is.
Grain and panini projection.
Film grain. Here, we can actually do a little bit. We can actually do these in post-production. So let me go back and see if there was any. So depth of field, you guys should probably know what depth of field is. It's I explained this in last week's video, but it's basically the reason why my background's blurry and my foreground's in focus. That's depth of field. So if you have a shallow depth of field, it will look like this, and if you have a very wide depth of field or deep depth of field, it will be clear in the background. So sports footage is shot with a high depth of field. So that's what depth of field does.
Depth of field, motion blur.
Motion blur makes, I mean, you guys should probably know what motion blur is from just any other video game. It just, like when you move your hand across, you might leave like a streak of color behind. That's just motion blur. Bloom is kind of brightness. In short,
bloom.
It's a little bit more complex than that, but like just think of it as brightness. Don't use it as a brightness setting, but just like this is a really simple way to explain it. And then vignette we just showed off,
grain and panini.
And then film grain. I'll put some film grain. I think there's a film grain setting in Adobe Premiere, so I'll put some film grain on screen right now. This is pretty. It should be pretty self-explanatory what film grain is, but I'll turn it on right now and then I'll turn it off. And then panini projection is, and I explained this last week because I actually had to look this up. Especially in video games, when you are creating things in like Unreal Engine or anything like that, it will like artificially warp the edges of your camera view because camera like lenses are inherently like rounded on the sides, so like they kind of warp the edges of the frame. And so what panini projection does is it de-warps that. That's a really simple way to explain it. I'm sure there's probably a little bit more advanced stuff. If you know the more advanced explanation for it, feel free to put it in the comments. But that's kind of just basically what those are.
Projection settings. And from the color tab, you can adjust the color.
Okay, this is a little early for the halfway point in the video, I think, but this is usually where I like to thank my Discord subscribers. So if you guys want to subscribe on Discord, you guys can get a virtual shout out from me right here. So you can thank J15, Wine&RKP, and Wheatbread for this great commercial ad break. This is also a point where I'm going to educate you. I'm going to let you guys know that I'm going to be, throughout the next section of this video, I'm going to be doing effects on screen. I didn't explain I was going to do this, but when I go over a certain section like exposure, for example, I'm going to actually adjust the exposure. I'm going to do it on the actual city so you guys can see what these effects actually look like if I have a setting for it in Adobe, because some of them I don't. Like bloom, for example, like I'm going to talk about bloom, but I don't have a way to adjust bloom in a video editing software. Like that's, again, it's very weird that they have bloom, but I'm going to do exposure, tint, all that stuff so that you guys can see what it actually looks like. All right, back to the video. So this tab is essentially just like conventional photo editing software. If you've ever messed around in any kind of like photo editing software, like especially like from my experience, Adobe Lightroom, because that's what I have experience using, or most photo editing softwares, I bet you your phone camera probably has most of these settings on it. They might be labeled as something different, but that's pretty much what they are. Exposure is how cameras brighten things, so you can actually adjust that in post. It doesn't look as good as when you just get the right lighting on camera, but exposure just is a very raw brightness, right? Whereas bloom's kind of like, I guess bloom's kind of hard to explain in terms of video production, in terms of the camera, because it's not something I'm used to ever touching in like real life. Like that's not something that like I mess with ever, so it's like hard to like compare it. But exposure is just like a really raw brightness. Like it will brighten everything on your photo, right? Or it will darken it if you pull it out, because you can actually put it in, put this number in the negatives. Contrast just allows darks to be darker and brights to be brighter, right? Tint, exactly what it sounds like. You can put a tint over your over your gameplay. If any of you have been playing Starfield recently, if you go into a lot of the cities, there's like a green hue or like a orange hue in Aquila City. That's pretty much tint. And then hue shift allows you to pitch that shift or the hue in like specific directions. And then saturation increases color intensity. So if you were to pull out saturation, which we saw in the dev diary, it'll turn it black and white, right? So white balance has temperature and tint, and white balance is just how your camera can make sure that it is the right look, right? Because depending on the lighting you have, light is inherently different colors. So if you've ever turned on a light bulb and it might be more yellow, and if you've ever gone into like a workshop or looked at a fluorescent light or something, they might be bright white. And when you're using a camera in those environments, it will look different. So it needs to detect what the color white is in all types of light. So that way it looks even and it looks the same everywhere you shoot it. So that's what white balance will do here, is it'll allow you to make those adjustments. So it does temperature and tint. I believe tint is pink and green, and then temperature is blue and red. So it'll bounce between that, because blue and red are the shades of like natural light colors. So like, you know, orangier lights, the sun is like kind of actually like bluer. It's, yeah. So if you ever need to adjust those, that's that. Trying to do this a little bit more simple than I did last week or on Monday. And the brightness is just exactly what you think it is. It's adjusting brightness settings. So like midtones are like the middle colors, and then you have shadows. So like that's exactly what it sounds like, the shadows. And then highlights are these like brighter edges on the buildings, like these bright lights. Those are the highlights. And so that's how you can adjust those. If you want to turn these down so you can see more detail in the windows, you would want to turn down the highlights. That's a pretty good way to see it. Or if you want to see like more in the shadows, you can you know, pull the shadows up, and then you can see more in the shadows.
Better that you can make changes to the distance clouds and volumetric clouds.
There's so much. Hold on, I have to sneeze. So in the atmosphere settings, I'm not gonna go over everything because there's just so much, and I can't explain all of it. I don't know what half this stuff does either. So I'm not going to go through it all, but just know that we can affect the weather essentially in any way that we want to, which is really cool. I mean, we can just look at all this. Like we have distance clouds, and then we can adjust how the clouds way out in the distance look. Now, obviously looking at the ground, so it's like hard to make comparisons, but you can take different types of clouds.
Distance clouds.
And they had volumetric, and there's a ton of stuff. So
clouds,
fog,
and atmosphere. In the environment tab, you can adjust the time of the day and set the simulation.
Wow, I mean, like, look at some of those. Some of those settings were really like
fog and atmosphere.
Realistic and intense.
Adjust the time of
I mean, we got zenith tint, we got aerosol density in the air. Like that's pretty cool.
The day and set the simulation speed to whatever speed you wish.
And then obviously we can set up to do time lapse and stuff like that, which I have no idea how this affects the actual game. Like when you're in photo mode, does the game just like not actually proceed in time when you're doing simulation speed stuff? Like, and then when you exit photo mode, does it revert back to what it looked like when you entered photo mode? I'm really curious to see how photo mode works in terms of affecting your actual game, because you can go crazy with the simulation speed in here. Could that be a cheatsy way to like fast forward the game? I would bet not, but still curious.
When taking your videos, there's also very important aspect of the keys. They are used to control the set of the points of how the camera and other transitions will happen in the cinematic camera mode.
Such a pretty shot.
Very first step is to open the photo mode. On the photo mode,
okay, we'll let this play for a second.
The cinematic mode arrows. Once the cinematic mode is active, you can start capturing keys. Then you can move the slider to a different time in the timeline. Then again, you can press the capture.
So they do a much better job explaining how the keys work in this week, and I feel like I did a bad job explaining how keys worked on Monday. So let me just give you guys a quick rundown of what he's talking about with keys. If you've ever worked in a motion graphics software, like really kind of any animation software, you'll know what these are. But essentially, a really easy way to explain it is a key is a point in which the simulation is going to be set. It's going to be fixed. So for example, if you want to set the time of day to be a specific time here, the brightness to be specific and the position of the camera to be specific, you can set that here, right? And that can be different than, there's a first key right here that he didn't talk about. So there's the initial key right here. And so when he presses, if he brings the slider over here and he presses play, it will play out that animation. So it'll move from this one set point in the simulation to this one set point in the simulation. And if there's no changes after this last one, it will continue to look the same way it did here. So if the simulation speed is set here, the time of day is set here, and there's no changes after that, it'll just probably hold. It'll probably hold at that, all those settings. Obviously, it won't pause the game because there's no way to pause the game, I don't think, in cinematic mode. At least not that I've seen so far. So everything else will stay the same. Everything else will stay the same, and the simulation will keep running. So basically, just think of keyframes as like the point on the graph in which specific things are set. And so you can adjust like where you have those specific things start. So if you're like, well, I don't actually like it at 60 seconds. I want it to get to there at 30 seconds. You can just move that keyframe over here because this is just all of that data of like where all of that specific information needs to be set to. And then this line is that transition to get there. That's the best way to probably explain it. I hope that's easier than what I did on Monday.
Capture key button.
And there's a lot more to this week. We can change position and like there's a bunch of different graphs. So like this is just X horizontal axis, but you can also change Z and Y. And so you can, there's a lot you can do in this. This is a very advanced thing. I was very giddy about this on Monday, but I understand like looking back now after my excitement has kind of faded away, like this could be very intimidating for a first time user. So I will 100% be putting out a tutorial on everything that the camera mode and cinematic mode and the whole photo mode has to offer to you guys. So that way everyone can actually fully utilize it because there's no simple mode right now.
After you have created the timeline that you wish, you can just play it from the start and see it all unravel before your eyes. One of my favorite things about the camera mode is that you can adjust the time of the day to capture the perfect moment, the perfect sunset or the sunrise for the city skyline. For the skyline of your city, oh, I want to make that fun. Yeah, so you can really capture the perfect sunset or the perfect sunrise for the skyline of your city. The in-game trailer was also filmed with the cinematic camera feature, and that was like really, really awesome in my opinion. It was like really,
Looking back at this trailer, I totally understand how they did everything for it, which is so cool. Because something they didn't bring up in this dev insight is that you can actually save presets. So with that little animation that they did in the trailer, right here where the city built away, what they were probably able to do is set a preset on how they wanted the city to zoom out. Right? You can set save points. And then they probably went through older saves of New $20 or $2.20's New Dollarton, or they just destroyed the city themselves and then re-recorded it at different steps of development, and then they're able to like cut it all together, which is so cool. Now that like you actually can like look back and see how they did it, like I'm just so excited to work with that camera mode. I'm so excited.
Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
And the next one is not existent because this was the last dev insight. But then we also have the City Skylines 2 community manager live stream, which I do plan on breaking down on Twitch probably today. So if you're watching this video and it's like been like a couple hours since this video came out, I might be live on Twitch. So make sure to drop a click down below and drop a follow because we have been breaking down a ton of the City Skylines 2 stuff on my Twitch stream. But I do plan on going through all of this today. So if you guys want to take a look at that, otherwise I'm going to end up cutting that up and then re-uploading it here on YouTube. So don't feel like you missed out on anything because I will be putting it here on YouTube as well. So I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a great journey going through these dev diaries with you guys. I'm really excited to cover more stuff on City Skylines 2. My work is picking up like crazy right now, so I'm trying my best to even like get streams out for my Twitch community, let alone YouTube videos. But I'm trying my best. Make sure you guys have notifications on because uploads might be a little sporadic unless City Skylines decides they're gonna like regularly upload something in the coming future. So I want to thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Deuces.